Nien Malhas is a solo lane player for Counterlogic Gaming. After playing for numerous challenger teams and Team Martin in the spring split of the LCS, he was recruited to CLG in order to replace a retiring hotshot GG. Besides having some big boots to fill, Nien also has had the tough road of figuring out a new position against opponents with much more experience. However, he has been flourishing in the role, and notably displaying an underrated humility and a willingness to learn. And everybody, welcome to the show. Zach, Malhas, and Tanso, how are you doing?
Doing pretty well. How about yourself, Matt?
Good, good. Things are all right on this end. We were talking a little bit before, and of course, CLG is kind of back in the lab, so to speak. You guys are. I find that a lot of teams are kind of going between this phase right now, where vacation has happened, but now it's just grinding back to preparing for season 4. So maybe tell a little bit about what CLG is kind of doing now.
Well, CLG, we had a boot camp schedule that we had going on before PAX, the 2 weeks leading up to PAX, where we wake up at 10 and then we practice and do miscellaneous activities until 1:30 when we have to go to bed. And we've decided to keep that schedule, and we're gonna just keep on going with that.
Cool.
And we started doing that up again like a week ago, so things have been going decent. Scrims are going all right, so we'll see how everything goes at IM.
Cool. One of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you anyway is that you kind of have a very classic story of start from the bottom kind of player, and then you've kind of made good and been recognized by a larger team. So maybe something that you can kind of walk me through is like your mentality through that. Like everyone kind of knows everyone kind of look up on Leaguepedia of when you left certain teams and that kind of junk. But how did you kind of go from starting playing and kind of being like, okay, now I'm actually on a really big team? Like, how do you kind of make that transition between like a lower tier to a higher tier, I suppose?
Well, when I first started playing League of Legends professionally, I was on the team with Yuzuki, Nubby Pooh Bear, High L9, and Elimination on Orbit. And I stuck through that team for a while. I was on that team for like at least 8 months, I believe. And I just always told myself that I would never leave the team unless if I got an offer from like TSM, CLG, or Dignitas, I think it was at the time, the top 3 teams. I ended up getting an offer from every other team, but I just didn't really want to leave my original team because I really liked everyone on the team. So after we didn't qualify for the LCS the first time, I ended up leaving the team. My main goal was just to be on the LCS. I just wanted some recognition and being able to play at the highest level with all the other players. And so I just wanted to do that. And eventually got picked up by Marn as a sub for them, and eventually they approached me to play as a starting AD. And from there, CLG recognized my talent in the spring split, and here I am. And it's really awesome just being on a team with CLG, being on a recognized team that's been in the scene for a long time.
Something that I noticed anyway from Worlds is that despite, people having teams and teammates, let's put it that way, like you yourself were, hanging out with other players and that kind of stuff. Like I remember we got Korean barbecue that one time and that kind of stuff. But do you find that you've played on a large amount of teams? Do you keep in contact with those players, or now that you're on CLG, is that kind of like your team, like your clique now?
I don't really have a clique in the scene. Like, not really even that close with CLG members. Like, I'm pretty close with most players. Well, not really. I'm just friends with most players, honestly. Like, I get along with most people in the NA, LCS. Like, everyone's pretty chill and relaxed. So, I don't really have a clique or anything. It's just everyone's cool to hang out with. So, I like to hang out with everyone.
That's cool. You said back in like an interview in around I think June, I think for Team Dignitas, you said that you were kind of like a very shy and reserved person. Now that you've kind of been in the team house for a couple months, I think we're closing around like 5-6 months now. Do you think that's changed, or are you kind of the same person?
Uh, it just takes me a while to get completely comfortable with people. It depends on how long it takes, but yeah, I'm not exactly 100% comfortable with everyone on CLG yet, like as I am with my close friends that I've been friends with for a long time. But that's the same with most people. But for the most part, I'm getting less and less shy as time goes on, becoming more and more outgoing. So things are going well.
Can you like afford to be like a shy person when you're on a team that has such like a high profile, I guess, as CLG?
Yeah, I think you can. As long as you're a good teammate, it doesn't really matter that much. Like, as long as you're willing to learn, as long as you're always trying to improve, as long as you're actually performing well, it doesn't really matter too much if you're a shy player. Like, as long as you get along with your teammates, it doesn't matter how shy or outgoing you are.
And I guess that kind of reflects like depends on your like your goals, like if you want to be like a big streamer, that kind of thing. So is it just a matter of you not just wanting to put that focus on, being one of those outward kind of personalities, I guess?
Well, when streaming, it's actually really easy for me to just be myself. I don't really even picture the people even being there. Like,
Hmm.
like when I had like my cap or average was 1,000 for a while, and I always do karaoke and stuff. Like, I
Oh,
like
I
karaoke.
remember that. I remember that. Those
Yeah,
good
I just
times.
really like karaoke. And honestly, if there was 1,000 people in front of me, I probably wouldn't be singing karaoke. But when I'm streaming, I'm just really comfortable since I'm at my computer setup, and all the viewers are really cool. So I just don't really care.
Um, when you first joined the team, I know Chouster's kind of moved on, retired now, and Big Fat LP is now a substitute. But when you joined the team, they were still very active members. Was it intimidating coming from like a lower tier teams and kind of like the amateur kind of challenger semi-pro teams, whatever we want to call it, to kind of like team with like legends on them, like people who have been around and been very successful in the scene?
No, I don't personally really get intimidated by that. Like, I don't have that much respect for any league player in specific, honestly. So they're just another player to me, even though they've been around in the scene longer. I didn't really have that intimidation factor. Like I played with them, played against them a lot, and I know how good they are. Like they weren't that much better than me, so I don't have that intimidation factor. So, but they're all really smart dudes, and I learned a lot, and I'm still am learning a lot. So it's awesome that I have this opportunity.
When you first came onto the team, like of course in the LCS you guys did have the opportunity to play against CLG. Was it kind of weird being on one side of the conflict and then being like, okay, here's this thing that I noticed about you when I played you. I can notice it again when I'm on your team.
Could you repeat the question? Sorry.
Did you notice anything like that? Like when you're facing them, and then you were on their team. You're facing against Double Lift, I think, and Chouster at the time in the bottom lane for Marn. Then you join the team. Do you kind of like say, okay, I kind of know how you play now, and can you kind of like adapt around that?
Well, we usually didn't play versus each other all that much. We didn't
Mm.
scrim too much, and in LCS games, you can't really learn that much about a player, opposed to like when you're actually living with them and playing with them all day, every day. Like you learn a lot more about their play style and everything, and how good they actually are. Um, but I guess playing against them before, I know what type of players they were. Like Link is a relatively safe player. Doublelift likes to farm a lot and stuff, which everyone really knows. But I just
Yeah.
more in-depth stuff that I've become accustomed to with their playstyles.
Mm. One of the things that we've kind of learned a lot about you, like I said, from other pros, that they've mentioned that you have a really good mindset, that you have like a really big hunger to learn, like almost a humility. How have you been using your off season time personally to grow? Like, what have you kind of been focusing on for yourself personally?
Well, after we didn't qualify for PAX, I was obviously pretty bummed. Or after we didn't qualify for Worlds, I was obviously pretty bummed. So I just went to my hometown and took a break for a while, hung out with friends, and just chilled out for a while. But after that, I did that for like a month around that time, and after that, I just went back to the CLG house and started practicing again, just watching replays, spamming solo queue, just usual stuff to practice.
Yeah. How do you kind of balance like how do you balance like admitting that you need to learn and get better with being confident about your play? Like obviously like you need a degree of confidence in order to be on a professional team. If self-doubt is like eating at you constantly, it's going to affect your play. So how do you kind of approach learning and saying, you know what, okay, I'm not the best, but I need to be the best. Like I want to be the best. But how do you balance that with saying, okay, like I'm not as good as I need to be, I suppose.
Um, well, I don't really have an issue with confidence. I never have. I think that I can handle myself in any position, and like I just understand my mistakes better than most people think. I believe, and I can come to terms with what I need to improve on better than most people. Like I tried to completely drop my ego when it comes to playing professional League of Legends. I just look at myself and compare myself to other players in similar positions and see how they handle things. Just compare myself. I just try to look at myself from a third person's perspective and just see how I can improve like completely. And I'm still confident when I play though. That doesn't even affect my play at all.
Even if it isn't like a formal rivalry, do you kind of look at any other player and say, I want to be as good as them, or I constantly like I want to be ahead of them almost?
Honestly, there's no specific player that I'm like, damn, that guy's just super good. I just want to surpass that guy. But there's a few players, of course, that are really, really good, like Shy from Korea,
Yeah.
Expression. There's a bunch of top laners in Korea that are actually really good that I want to get better than. But there's no one player in specific. Like, there's a couple of European. There's just a bunch of good top laners actually, just throughout the world that I want to surpass and I will surpass. And I respect. But there's not just one player that I idolize.
Ah, okay. There isn't that kind of like Moby Dick where you're like, I'm gonna be better than him. Like I'm just gonna like conquer him, which sometimes I guess you need that as motivation. But when you have so many players to kind of look at and so much sampling almost, it's like different top laners play the game differently. I suppose like I find that the role is very versatile in that you can play tanky, you can play the split farmers that are really popular right now. You can play AP champions. So it's like you almost have different flavors to sample from. You can kind of look at different players as you need to improve different parts of your game and be like, okay, this is what I can take from him and him and him and him. Do you find that like you look at specific players and try to like take something specific out of it, or is it just like an overall like looking at their style?
Well, you when judging a top laner, you can always just look at their play style and how they approach the game, and if they are like an NA top laner, that you can watch their stream VODs and just see how their thought process. You can implement their thought process into some of your things, like change how you think and maybe improve how you think. But for the most part, there's certain top laners just that have strengths. Like Flame is a really good split pusher. He knows how to pressure the map really well. Shy is just an all-around really good top laner. Like his laning phase is solid. Everything about him is solid. You can just look to him for that. And then there's top laners like Mega Zero, Quas, Apple that are extremely lane dominant. You can just look to their laning phase and see how you can improve your laning phase. It's just small things like that. Just certain things. Like you can learn anything from any player. Like I could watch a Bronze 5 player and probably learn something if I watch long enough. You can always learn new things from other people because people have very different ways of thinking, and you can always implement different ways into thinking into your own playstyle.
That was something that I actually noticed at Worlds, in that sitting and watching with pros, they like we were watching the games as fans. We were looking at the games like, okay, this is an awesome game, that kind of stuff. But the pros, you can kind of see like the gears turning in their head, and you can kind of be like, okay, they're looking and trying to like piece together any little thing that's going to help. Was that something that you did, or were you just kind of content to sit back, watch Worlds?
Honestly, I just was for the most part just sitting back and watching the games. Like I paid a bit more attention to the top laners, but I wasn't just focusing solely on the top laners. I just went to Worlds to enjoy the top quality games.
Was it hard watching Worlds in that regard, that like you guys weren't like, you didn't qualify for PAX, didn't qualify for Worlds obviously, but was it difficult being like, I feel like I should be there?
Oh no, I came to terms with that a while ago. Like we as a team did not deserve to go. We would have gotten crushed by all those teams. We were not on the same level as them, so I had no remorse towards it. That we didn't deserve to be there, they did, so I can't feel bad about it.
And it like kind of coming back to that humility factor anyway, like it takes a real person to be able to admit that, I guess. Like it's very easy to try to save face in a certain situation and try to be like, okay, we got robbed, or there's a lot of potential. Like it's almost becoming a little bit of an in joke in the community about CLG and potential anyway. But it's very comforting to see someone who at least kind of admits that there's a lot of improvement need to be made, and being like, okay, well now we're gonna go do it. It's being very direct is a very good thing about improvement anyway, like that. You said in the past that you like being an innovator in your role, like like to be able to change or like create metas, so to speak. Is there anything about season 4 that like you look at and say, man, I want to try that?
I haven't put too much thought into it. I've just been focusing on this season because we still have IEM Clone coming up, and then after that, Battle of Atlantic. But once it comes out, I think I'll be among the first people to figure out like what's super strong. Like right now in top lane, I'm just nowhere near as comfortable as other top laners because a large portion of top lane is just knowledge compared to other roles. There's just so much knowledge you have to learn. So I still need to understand the basics before I can just fully innovate.
Mm.
Like as an 80 carry on Marn, I figured out a couple OP or not OP. I consider them to be OP bot lanes. Like Xerath Fiddlesticks is incredibly strong. Lee Sin and Elise were incredibly strong, but we failed to qualify, and we were gonna run the bot lanes in the next split, but since it didn't work out, I
Yeah.
just kind of scrapped the idea, and here I am as a top laner. But for the most part, yeah, I just try to innovate and think of what's OP that isn't currently played because I feel like a lot of pro players just solely copy other players and just look at what do they do and just directly implement it rather than understanding the fundamentals of it and what can actually beat it. Like, there's a bunch of OP top laners that you can just counter them and also have a strong champion as well. I don't really want to go into the champions that I think counter them, but there's just a different way of playing the game, and I prefer to play it from a different. How do I word this? I prefer to innovate and try to throw other players off their game. Because if you're, especially for top lane, if you're not used to playing against a certain champion, you're gonna have a lot harder time than going against a Jax or an Ekton that you played against 1,000 times.
Kind of speaking to that anyway, it's like how do you balance like wanting to try out new things with it's almost like, looking at unconventional bot lanes or unconventional mids or something like that. It's like you can learn unconventional like champions that when you face another player, they may not have as much experience playing against a champion. They may not know how it works. I mean, I get wrecked by victors every time I play in solo queue because no one plays them. But then again, like how do you all that time you're spending working on unconventional champions is time you could be spending on like the current OP champions, and it could make a difference. So how do you kind of balance wanting to innovate or try out new things, or like you're just bored of playing the same champions over and over again when you could take that time, improve your mechanics with something that is going to work?
Like I said before, for top lane in specific, I just don't have the fundamentals down as well as I did for the other roles. So I need to work on my basics before I can just fully innovate the role. Like
Yeah.
I need to fully understand the role. You need to have a very, very strong understanding of your role and how it is played before you can successfully innovate the role. And so I just don't have that understanding yet. So it is right that it's it's not bad that a lot of pro players have the mentality of just looking at the current OPs and just solely practicing them rather than looking to new champions and maybe implementing them into their playstyle. But I just think it's not ideal.
Especially with you said you were very new to the role, and something that I'm always really curious about is kind of the concept of like training partners or like mentors or any like people helping each other out anyway. Are you the type of person that like you're in the top lane, you're going to figure it out yourself, or you do have a resource in other people who have played the lane in your house, like you've got Hotshot GG in your house anyway, so he's got a lot of perspective in top lane and that mentality. You've got relationships with other teams in North America. Like, do you have anyone that you kind of go to and be like, okay, I'm trying to work through this and I need some help, can you help me?
I have approached Hotshot a few times. Honestly, not very many times, and some other top laners sometimes as well. But for the most part, I just try to develop my own playstyle. Like, although it is hard to learn a new role, I think that over time I can develop my own playstyle that is a strong one. And I don't, although I do ask for people for influence and like help, maybe. I mean, you can never be harmed from asking people for help. So, I mean, I do ask people for help, but I don't try to just take it for what they give me and just directly copy it. Like I said, just looking at different things, I try to just implement it in the best way possible and try to just shape what they tell me and implement it into my own play style and improve from it.
Cool. What, just kind of like wrapping this up, what do you think you do better than anyone else and like as a player?
I think that although I haven't been able to represent it in the top lane role because I'm not very comfortable in the early game and laning phase, that I'm not in the position to actually represent, showcase my skill in farming. I think that I'm among the best farmers in the world, maybe even the best farmer in the world. I don't like. I think that throughout all my MOBA career, I've been focused on farming. Like in solo queue, I even if I really want to win the game, I just always like pray for my team to throw or something so I can just keep on farming and
Yeah,
get
of
to
course.
6 items. Like I just really enjoy farming 6 items. Like Han, I like there was a guy named Sniper Daddy 420 that I really respected. I had two idols in that game, and that was Sniper Daddy 420 and Chew 8. Who Chew 8 is a Han player, or not a Han player, a League player now, and Sniper Daddy 420. I think he just plays Dota games.
I actually watched a lot of Honcast, and I think I remember watching a lot of Shu-8. He played Amin Pebbles, didn't he?
Oh yeah, Chew 8 was a god at that game. I
Yeah.
really respected that guy. I want to become on a level even higher than he was. Like he was on a level higher than Faker, Mad Life, Uzi,
Mm.
all the really top players. Like every single player respected him as the best player. And eventually I want to reach that point and maybe even above that point. But I think that I've just refined my farming so well throughout all my MOBA experience, and maybe I've fallen off a bit because I'm in a top lane role where I'm not very comfortable. But I think that once I get more comfortable in role, people will realize my farming capability and how well I can farm.
Cool. And now that you guys are going to IEM, like we said, Battle of the Atlantic, what's something that you think that CLG does better than any other team? It doesn't have to be something specific. It can be like metaphorical, of course. But like, what do you think that you guys definitely have that other teams may lack?
Um, I think that CLG as a whole, we just have a really high mechanical skill. We have really high mechanically skilled player in every position, so I think that's one thing we have an advantage over teams where they have a couple players that aren't that mechanically talented and a couple players that are very mechanically talented. But yeah, I think that's our main strength, just raw mechanical skill.
Cool, and it's always good to have like a little bit of a foundation for that anyway, of just, having something you can fall back on almost. It's like, okay, even if strategy, fails or, things get heated, you at least have the mechanical skill that you can kind of fall back on, and that's always a good, base to have. I guess we're kind of like wrapping this up. Do you have any final words that you wanted to say? Anything that you wanted to talk about?
Um, Nothing that comes to mind really.
No?
I guess I'll just give some shout outs.
Cool.
Shout out to Razor, Zubu, iBuyPower, and XMG. Thank you guys very much for sponsoring us. We really appreciate it. Shout outs to my family and friends. Thank you guys for supporting me. Shout outs to all the fans that have been supporting me throughout my career. Any new fans, any fans to CLG, thank you guys. And thank you to Matt Demers for doing this interview.
Oh, you flatter me. You flatter me. You can follow Nien on Twitter at CLG_Nien, Nien. Isn't your name spelled wrong on the back of your jersey or something like that? Isn't it spelled CLG9 or something like that?
Yeah, there is a typo on our newest edition of jerseys where it's Nein.
Nice.
So it's pretty funny that I'll be wearing that to Germany. I can just turn my
Oh,
back
gosh.
whenever someone asks for anything.
I didn't think about that. That's pretty funny. But again, if you want to follow us and more of what we're doing, you can subscribe to us on YouTube. You can also follow us at twitter.com/lolking.net. You can also follow me as well on Twitter at Matt Demers. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good night and happy league, everyone. Happy league.
Yeah, see you guys.
See you.